not from around these parts, huh?
I'm a judge in the city.
What you doing in a shithole like this?
I'll be better soon, then I'm gone.
We can both look forward to that day then, can't we? In the meantime, why don't you try and make some friends?
What you eating? I know.
Stay clear of that lot over there. Give them toys to play with like children. Some of them think they are too.
Hello.
You're out causing mischief, are you? Claiming the town rees.
What's his story?
He was here when I got here.
Who rules, Tony?
Ginny Pin.
It's share and share alike here, Judge.
Communism always has the greatest attraction for those with the least.
See you tonight.
I'd like to make an official complaint. He's the menace here. He's been at me from the jump.
Sometimes people get confused.
I'm not confused.
Have you been taking your medication?
I feel sorry for you, Judge. You've got a raw deal. You'll get worse and worse till you can't speak. Or even lift a finger. That's if you can still think straight enough to know what kind of hell you're in. We don't stop playing because we get old. We get old because we stop playing.
You think you got everyone pegged?
Hey! Bingo! I'm really glad we were able to spend this time together. You need to check out now. You'll get what's coming to us in the end.
The world breaks everyone. And afterward, many are strong at the broken places. Where there are no lions, hyenas rule.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Joining me, as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom?
Greetings and salutations, slightly twisted retirees. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. How the hell you doing?
I am doing well. Just another Monday. Normal Monday, but that's all it takes.
When you're unemployed, days don't mean anything. It could be Saturday for all I know. I don't know.
All right. Also with us, it's Don and Ellie. What's up, Don?
Yeah, what's going on? Always happy to be here.
All right. This episode, we are talking a movie that did get a theatrical release. I'm actually not sure how wide of a release. Because it seems like not that many people even knew that it was coming out, but I had screenings, so it should at least be going to all the mid-size cities. But that movie would be The Rule of Jenny Penn, which is an interesting title to a movie. You probably is like, well, what the hell? Until you actually watch it or see a trailer to maybe get an understanding. But the synopsis is as follows. Confined to a secluded rest home and trapped within his stroke-ridden body, a former judge must stop an elderly psychopath who employs a child's puppet to abuse the home's residents with deadly consequences. Starring John Lithgow and Jeffrey Rush, or at least those are the top two billed for good reason, which we'll get into, I'm sure. Directed by James Ashcroft. So, we will start with our general thoughts. Venom, The Rule of Jenny Penn, what did you think?
All right, this is going to be a weird review because I had a really odd experience watching this movie. It's like, okay, first let's start with the good. The technical prowess here is excellent. It's a very well-made film. There's some beautiful cinematography throughout. There's actually two shots in this movie that I'll highlight later that are potentially some of my favorite shots of the year. Like really, really beautifully shot, beautifully composed. great score, and then of course these performances. Jeffrey Rush and John Lithgow are absolutely stellar here. I mean, this could be potentially one of Lithgow's, best performances. Rush is a little bit more subdued as he is a stroke victim, so obviously he's a little bit slower, speaks a little slower, moves a little slower. But Lithgow, I mean, this is like peak Lithgow. Like if you remember Lithgow from like Bad Dreams and season 4 of Dexter when he played the Trinity Killer. This is just, it harkens back to some of the best stuff that Lithgow's ever done. Now, the problems that I have with this movie. This is the worst staffed nursing home on the fucking planet. There are so many plot holes in this movie, and they all revolve around this nursing home. There's no orderlies in this nursing home. I don't remember seeing one orderly anywhere in here. In fact, there's only one male nurse in the whole movie, and he barely has a speaking line. There's no security cameras in this goddamn nursing home. Who the hell has ever heard of a nursing home with no security cameras? That doesn't make sense at all. I mean, there's just so many issues. I'll be able to highlight them more when we're talking about the walkthrough, but it's like this movie left me scratching my head because from a technical aspect, it's beautiful. It's objectively a very well made film. And the story isn't bad. It's just there's so many plot holes. And then the other big thing that I have too is again, anybody who's listened to me, any of my shows for a long time knows how much I abhor bullying. I can't stand bullying in horror movies. It's a common trope. It's something that I have to live with as a horror fan. But in this movie, for the first time, I have to deal with bullying in a nursing home, and that. Like when I see one adult bullying another adult, I turn off so easily. Like I just lose complete interest. My friends, in my opinion, Jonathan Lithgow is not a psychopath or a sociopath in this movie. He's just a fucking bully. That's it. He's a bully. He's not crazy. He's not insane. Everything he does is meticulous. He doesn't fly off the handle. He doesn't make snap decisions. He's just a goddamn bully. And then once we get the reveal of who he is and how long he's been here, it just makes it even more obvious that he's just a fucking bully. He just wants to control this nursing home. And to me, that doesn't make a horror film. To the point where, and this might be a little bit of a spoiler, but I don't care. I'm going to say it anyway. Lithgow doesn't actually kill anybody in this movie. He is responsible for deaths, yes, but he does not murder anyone. So this movie left me just scratching my head. Like, what is the point of this film? Like, getting old sucks. Nursing homes are terrible. Like, I just don't know what this, James Ashcroft was trying to convey with this movie. Now, obviously, as I've already said, and I'll say it multiple times the rest of the show, it's an amazingly well done movie. Great performances. I will not deny any of the filmmaking prowess at display on this film, but this story just left me so frustrated. Like I've watched the movie twice now. Unfortunately I had to watch it a second time because of certain inebriation during the first viewing, but I did watch it again a second time today. And the issues that I have with it were just highlighted even more. Just the whole one adult bullying another adult, or an adult bullying a group of adults. It just irks the shit out of me. It's not like a stalker situation. Like, that's different. A stalker, with the intention of killing someone, that's different. Like, at no point in this movie did I feel like Lithgow was ready to kill anybody. Yeah, if that makes sense. So I don't know. This is just a really weird movie. There is just so many plot holes. I have so many issues with just this nursing home. This is the most unrealistic nursing home ever set to fucking film. And it bothers me because every other aspect of the film is great. You're telling me that you couldn't throw a security camera in here and do like a gag with the security cameras or something, the way that they did with the call button. They did a call button gag in the movie that worked really well. Do something like that with security cameras. It doesn't make sense that this is a fairly high-priced nursing home, because I used to work at a nursing home. I worked at Abbott Terrace, a retirement home back in Connecticut. And they are not this nice. Like, this is obviously a high-priced nursing home, yet there ain't a goddamn security guard or orderly or security camera to be found. And that just completely takes me out of the realism of the film. So I don't know. This movie is going to end up being a weird one because I can't deny how great the film is, how great the performances are, how great the world building is, like all of it. But just me personally, on a personal level, I have too many issues to say that I really like this movie. I enjoyed it after the first watch. But then on the second watch, it just, like I said, it really started to highlight all of the issues that I have with it. With Lithgow's character, with some of the storytelling, just some of the character decisions. I can't get into a lot of it, obviously, until we get into the walkthrough. But I guess I'll just leave it at that. That honestly, I don't know how I feel about this movie. Like, if I had to give it a rating, I would give it a fairly high one, mainly because of its filmmaking. But when it comes to, like, the enjoyment that I got out of this story, I got very little enjoyment out of this story. This movie was just frustration. Not as bad as like a Darren Aronofsky movie. Those things are just peak frustration. But this, yeah, like I said, I watched it twice and I walked away both times thinking, what the fuck was the point of this? Like on top of the fact that the finale is so uneventful, like that's probably getting into spoiler territory, so I'll leave it at that for now. I'll just say I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this movie. Obviously, it's great to look at. It sounds great, but if you have any issues with bullying or plot holes the way I do, this movie is going to leave you scratching your head, I think. But it's still worth seeing. I still would highly recommend this, especially in theaters. The sound design in this movie is great. Early in the film, right after the judge has his stroke, they utilize the sound design to really make you put you in, his place on what he's experiencing, what he hears, things like that. There's also a great scene later in the film where he's doing some exercises, post-stroke exercises, and he draws a clock on a piece of paper. It looks a certain way to him, but then when he passes it over to the physical therapist, it looks completely different. And I'm like, oh, this movie really does a great job of showing the frustration of being an elderly person and no longer having control of your environment or even your life, honestly. So, and like I said, in that aspect, the movie is spectacular. Potentially one of the greatest senior community films I think I've ever watched. This is up there with like Late Phases and Cocoon and movies like that. So, like I said, it's objectively a great movie. I just had a lot of issues with it. So, folks, go out and see it. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if you felt the same, frustrations with the film that I did. But yeah, I'm kind of on the fence with this film. I just don't really know. I may have to watch it again, which I don't know if I really want to. But I'm just kind of scratching my head on whether I like this or not. Maybe over the course of this episode, either while Mike and Don are speaking or while I'm going through the walkthrough, maybe I might change my opinion on a couple of things, or maybe Don or Mike might open my eyes on a couple of things. But as of right now, I'm just kind of like, what the fuck did I watch? So I'll leave my general thoughts at that for now.
All right. Let's go over to Don. What did you think of the movie?
Well, I'm not going to be much help because I'm kind of in the same boat as Venom, with even less interest in trying to give it an extra time. I do agree on pretty much everything. I do like the general setup of this. I do think there's something kind of unnerving about, sinister goings on in an old folks home, or like it was specifically said this was like a hospice center, right? It wasn't a genuine daycare. It was like a hospice center, right? Because I don't remember what the purpose of it was.
No, this was actually a rehabilitation home. These people were, this wasn't a hospice, because a hospice, generally, those people are expecting to die. It's basically like their final days. This wasn't that,
okay.
Because there were multiple people here who were talking about, once I get better, I'll be out of here, because the judge was there voluntarily. Don't forget, it's not like he was committed or anything. He's paying to be in there. Yeah.
Okay, that kind of changes everything because I thought he was sent there as I knew it wasn't a hospice center, but I thought it was like a general daycare center. Okay, now that makes a little bit more sense. Okay, yeah. I mean, the like I was saying, the central idea has some merit to it. The idea of this guy trying to take, rule over this facility, and I do admit the doll looks genuinely creepy. I do like some of the interactions he has, regardless of how you feel on the bullying matter. The general idea of what takes place in here, I think, has something worthwhile to work on. But yeah, man, that facility is like the absolute shittiest thing, shittiest run facility I've ever seen. Yeah, I'm glad you pointed out the lack of security, the lack of staff that goes on in there, because there is no way on earth anybody is going to let any of these people run around without supervision. I mean, if you're trying to rehabilitate people, you would want to make sure that they're going to get rehabilitated and out on their own. Why would you not have somebody there to ensure that there's no progress, their progress isn't harmed? Or nobody's presenting a danger to others, which is exactly what happens here, because that's the general gist of the movie. There's somebody that presents a threat to others, and yeah, not having a security camera, like, you would have caught everything he does the second he does it, and you would have thrown him out immediately. Like, I mean, I don't even remember what his actual purpose was for being sent there, because if you spend 5 minutes with him, he's completely fine. He's a little irrational, and gradually you discover he's psychotic. But he almost has no business being there. I mean, especially with some of the outlandish routines he does. I mean, I'm sure it's in the trailer you've seen, like the big song and dance routine he does. So it doesn't really feel like he has a purpose for being there. And then the way that he treats the others, you would have found out what's going on immediately, and you would have thrown him out, and he would have been off on his next one or whatever was going on, because that's the other thing here. There's really no purpose for doing this other than exploitation of power. And I'm sorry, that's just not really that big of a threatening motif. I don't see anything about what he does as being anything more than just a play for power. And if that's the entire plan, then this whole thing is just ridiculous. Then yeah, I don't really have much fear, or anything that he does is really going to impact me that much, because you just stand up to him, and he'd probably back down. But yeah, the whole thing just feels off. There's an idea here, but yeah, the whole idea of what happens is kind of undone. And then yeah, the last central overriding factor here is that this is just not much of a horror film at all. I mean, we've talked about these kinds of films before. If we weren't doing this, I probably wouldn't have checked this one out. So I mean, yeah, the idea works in general. The idea works in theory. I would have liked to have seen something more malicious happen, or him actually being responsible for these old people, for these deaths or whatever. But yeah, it's not horror enough. The central storyline kind of gets unraveled the longer it goes, and this whole facility is just not in the slightest bit realistic. And it just feels more like it's done simply to keep the film moving. So it kind of falls flat if you're really trying to look at it. So not one that I think really deserves the hype, because I've seen Stephen King call it like one of his favorite films of the year. Like, I mean, unless he's talking films in general, then I don't see it. It's not much of a horror film. I'm going to say that out. It's like one of the last big things. But yeah, it's worth a watch if you're into seeing these two guys, because I do agree. I do like the way that they interact with each other. That one speech that back and forth speech that they have is actually really interesting, and I kind of like the way that they play off of each other. But it's just not enough to really keep me interested, keep me invested. And unless we were doing a show, I probably wouldn't have checked this one out. So yeah, I'm not going to be your your life preserver or an instigator for a second watch here. I'm kind of in line with you, maybe a little bit less, and with even less interest in revisiting it down the road. So, at the sake of giving spoilers, I think that's pretty much going to be it for me.
Okay, so for me, I enjoyed the movie, but mostly based on, the performances of the cast. I thought the cast was really good. I do agree it seems to be a movie about bullying and kind of like a more adult take on bullying and like what has to be done to overcome bullying. I think the criticism of the facility itself, yeah, I was thinking that as well watching the movie, like, wow, trying to keep it a little vague, like certain character, while they're certainly able to move around like pretty freely, um, without anyone noticing. But then I was like thinking of like just certain scenes, and I think one there it's kind of a play on the character's history because it looks like before he was there as like a patient or wherever he was part of the staff. I think that's what some of the movie indicates. So maybe there's like favoritism.
Spoiler.
And yeah, well, we don't know what character I'm talking about necessarily, but the I also think the staff generally just doesn't care because I think that's kind of like a metaphor for a lot of bullying situations in real life, is that like people take a passive approach to doing anything about it. They're too involved with themselves, or their time and resources are taken up by the patients that like need more active care versus like the passive care of like some of the higher functioning patients. So it's not like because I do agree it's still pretty extreme how they can move, like get around without any detection. I'm not going to totally like make excuses for it, but I do think they were trying to at least put some stuff in there of like why that was possible. Whether you fully like buy into that or not, yeah, everyone's going to be different on how much, I guess, grace they're willing to give that. But pretty much, and as far as it being a horror movie or not, like I get it. It's pretty on the line. I think if you find like bullying itself to be like horror and what he's doing, because like to me, why I think this movie's like good, I might be the highest on it out of the three. It's hard to call it enjoyable because it's like basically 90 minutes of elder abuse. Like the first like 15 minutes or so, I almost thought like we were supposed to be laughing because like I was like, dang, like this like, it's almost a situation where you think some of the things are funny at first until you realize like, oh no, this is like dark and this is bad and it's getting worse and more sadistic as far as what's going on. And like it goes from like possibly like maybe I'm supposed to be laughing at some of this, and then it's like no, this is totally just getting darker. And then eventually we get the culmination of what happens, which I think they're saying like I guess sometimes to counteract bullying you gotta do something back. But yeah, overall it I would almost call it like uncomfortable watch in some ways, just because like you I feel not even because of our two main characters. Well, it, I would say some of the stuff that's happening to the other patients is almost even more disturbing, and like you're witnessing, like you just kind of feel bad and like you feel kind of awful actually for like what's being allowed to happen in there. So I can't really say enjoyable so much because you're probably not going to enjoy the things being depicted on the screen. But yeah, I did like it just based on the strength of the performances of our main two. I think like any interactions they had were really good. And I haven't seen Lithgow in like this prominent of a role in a minute, so it was good to see him back. Jeffrey Rush as the judge was good, and I even liked the other guy. What was he like? New Zealand?
Yeah, the rugby player, Sonny.
Yeah, I liked him, and there was plenty of moments I kind of felt sorry for him. too.
I'll have a lot to say about him.
Well, yeah, he's kind of like, there's a lot to say about him in both directions. I would agree. Once we actually get into like spoilers, but overall, yeah, I liked it, but enjoyable would be the wrong term to use. But I will just say, like, if you just want to see like good quality actors uh performing their craft well, yeah, I would recommend checking it out. So outside of like spoiling anymore, I'll leave my general thoughts there for now.
Yeah, on first watch, I really was struck by just the horror of being old. For those who don't know, I'm the oldest of the three of us here, so I'm the closest to probably moving into a nursing home of the three of us. And to watch, especially on the first watch, to see like the first 15 to 20 minutes of the film, it's disheartening. It's heartbreaking. It really is to see this man who obviously he's not a young man, but he's a judge, a very important person, a very, cultured person. And then he has one stroke and suddenly he's basically reverted back to a child. He's got to have somebody bathe him, change him, clothe him. That's really, really rough. That's terrifying. Like, that's the true horror of this movie, not anything that Lithgow does. The true horror is just getting old. And especially because I love Jeffrey Rush. I legitimately love him. I mean, he's in one of my favorite movies ever, Mystery Men, as the villain, Casanova Frankenstein. And I adore his performance in that movie. It really, but to see him, like almost 30 years, I think Mystery Men was like 97, 98, somewhere in that range. So to see him almost 30 years later in this role, it is definitely disheartening, like I said, especially for somebody like me in his 50s, who's, maybe only a good 20, 30 years away from being shipped off to a nursing home. So, that aspect of it definitely did work on me. But like I said, once Lithgow starts doing everything that he does, it just, like I said, like, I even take offense to the synopsis of this movie. The synopsis of this movie calls David Creeley an elderly psychopath. I'm sorry, he is not a psychopath. By definition, he is not a psychopath. The scene with the swapped key cards is one example of how he's not. Obviously, for people who haven't seen the movie, you don't know what the hell I'm talking about right now, but there is a scene in there where he makes a mistake, and psychopaths don't make mistakes. Psychopaths are meticulous. They plan. They work out the plan over and over. They actually play it out in their head and with variables and everything else. And this is just not who we're seeing here. This is just a stupid old man who likes to, control people. I mean, he's very similar to Hugh Grant in Heretic. He just wants to control. He doesn't want to necessarily kill any of these people. At least it doesn't seem that way. Even though he is responsible for some deaths in the film. It's just, I don't know. Like I said, this is a very weird movie. Like maybe I'm not giving the movie enough credit, and it's actually better than I'm, placing it, only because of the frustration with this hospital. Like I said, this hospital is so unrealistic. It's so fake that it takes you out of the movie. Every single time that there's an attack or there's, an argument and no staff shows up, no orderlies show up, it just takes you out of the movie because it's so. And I understand, I've actually worked at a nursing home, so maybe that previous knowledge kind of adds to my frustration, because my friends, I worked at a nursing home with 3 levels. We had one security guard on each level, security cameras in every hallway, pretty much every room except the bathrooms. I mean, and this was back in 1991, my friends. This was literally over 30 years ago that I worked at this place, and it had amazing security. So, I mean, when you watch a movie like this and you have that kind of previous knowledge, it kind of takes you out of it. It's kind of like a shark expert watching a shark movie. They laugh at it because it's so fake and the science doesn't make sense and everything else. So it's just one of those, small examples where, since I have some previous knowledge, I couldn't get into the movie because it's so fake. It's so goddamn fake that it hurts my head. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what else I can really say that that isn't a spoiler. So if there's anything you guys want to add before we get into the walkthrough.
Yeah, I can't think of much.
No.
All right, folks, this is going to be your final spoiler warning. If you have not seen The Rule of Jenny Penn and are interested in seeing it based on our spoiler-free thoughts, go ahead and pause the podcast and watch the movie and come on back. If you've already seen the movie or have no interest in it, stick around and find out what our detailed thoughts on the film are. So, our movie opens up in court. We are in a court. It looks like there is a child molestation case going on right now. Jeffrey Rush plays Stephen Mortensen. He is the judge. And the movie actually opens with him already losing his focus. Like literally when the movie opens, he's concentrating on a fly that's on the bench. And then suddenly someone goes, "Your Honor." And suddenly the camera pans out and we see that we're in a full courtroom, like waiting, anticipating the judge for what he's about to say. Finally, the judge starts to talk. He starts to basically sentence the child molester. As it turns out, he assaulted 8 different children. So the judge gives him 16 years in prison. Seems light. I think most parents would probably say that's not really 8 counts of child molestation, and he only goes to prison for 16 years. And he's only, I think they said he wasn't eligible for parole for 9, so he probably is only going to serve 9 or 10. So, seems odd, but it's New Zealand, so I don't know much about New Zealand law, so take it with a grain of salt, I guess. After he announces the sentence, he drops his pen. He's holding a pen in his hand, and he actually drops it. And he goes to try to pick it up, and he can't. He can't grip it. Suddenly, you hear, like, the sound design, the audio start to kind of echo, start to sound like it's kind of like, in a tunnel or something. And he keeps kind of snapping out of it. Like, every now and again, the audio will go kind of echoey, the video will get maybe slightly out of focus, but then it'll snap out of it. And at that moment, the mother of one of the kids, I guess, or I'm not sure if it was the mother of one of the kids or all of the kids that got molested, but she basically starts saying thank you over and over again. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The judge basically tells her, "Don't thank me. I didn't do anything. If anything, you should be searching your own soul because you allowed this to happen. You literally," because apparently this guy was a repeat offender. We don't really get a whole lot of information on the case, just little bits like that he's a repeat offender, blah, blah, blah. But the judge basically tells the mother, don't thank me. I did nothing. I've done nothing but do my job. If anything, you are just as responsible as he is for the molestation of your children, which is a pretty brutal thing for a judge to say to a parent, but there you go. Obviously, since we don't get any information on the court case, we don't really know what's going on. We kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. Anyway, while he's yelling at the mother and basically admonishing her for letting her children get molested, he ends up falling out of his chair and he has a stroke. When he comes to, he is now at this nursing home. I forgot the name of the nursing home, but I don't think it's all that important anyway. Like something Pines, I guess. I forget. But he is in this nursing home. We find out that he voluntarily entered this nursing home to rehabilitate. Because obviously, like I said, he had a stroke. So he has now lost the use of the right side of his body, I believe. His right arm and right leg are basically useless. And then you could even see the droop on his face, like on the right side of his face. You could see like the lip kind of drooping over. So a great makeup job to, make him look like an actual stroke victim. My father had a stroke. My father had 8 strokes, so I know what a stroke victim looks like, and they did a great job here, so kudos to the makeup team. On his first day there at the nursing home, the judge meets Sonny. Sonny is an ex-rugby player who used to play for the New Zealand national team, and this guy's actually considered a hero because he was on the team when they won the Rugby World Cup in whatever year it was. They say what year in the movie, but I wasn't paying that close attention. So, they kind of strike up a friendship and, just kind of start talking, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, we are introduced to David Creeley, and that is John Lithgow's character. And we see that he's a very quiet person, kind of keeping to himself, and he has a hand puppet. An interesting little hand puppet that looks like it looks like a Cupid doll that had eyes at one point, but the eyes were taken out. So now whenever Lithgow holds the puppet up and there's light behind them, like there's backlighting, it almost looks like the puppet's eyes are glowing, which is kind of a cool little effect. Anyway, I don't know if it's his first night there, but on one of his first nights there, the judge witnesses David Creeley kind of attack his roommate Sonny, the rugby player, with the puppet. Basically, it's a hand puppet, so it's basically on his hand. And he basically starts beating the hell out of Sonny's crotch, like literally just almost like he's simulating the puppet giving him fellatio, if that makes sense. But it's a lot more aggressive. So he's obviously doing damage to him. Basically, the next day, the judge asks Sonny, why do you take that from him? Sonny gets pissed off at him and just tells him to fuck off. On another night there, what ends up happening is Dave Creeley is basically in the room, in the judge's room, which of course he's not supposed to be in. And he's got one of those, what do they call those? One of those little urinal thingies that you pee into, not a bedpan, but one of those plastic buckets that you urinate into when you're in the hospital. And he's basically just sitting in the corner of the judge's room. And then suddenly he just gets up and he just dumps the contents of the urine bucket onto the judge, of course, making it look like the judge has wet himself. So already the antagonizing has begun. David Creel's already had it in for this judge. Later on, we actually find out that Creel knew who the judge was. Like he was in his courtroom one day and that he was kind of impressed with, the stature of the man, blah, 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 that he was almost inspired by him, if you will. So obviously the judge tries to tell the staff, David Creel was in my room. I didn't do this. I didn't wet myself. Obviously the nurses are like, well, an old man has urine on his lap. And of course they're instantly going to think that he just pissed himself. So, there's a little bit of a hubbub, but it all quiets down and everybody goes back to bed. Let's see. On another night, David Creel comes into the room. Basically, the rest of this movie is just going to be David Creel doing different things against different residents, So, I mean, there's not really a whole... It's not the deepest story out there. But on one occasion, I may not all get these all in order, but basically on one occasion, he ends up antagonizing an old woman, actually hits her on the head with the puppet. And this is a woman who's obviously got dementia. She doesn't really know where she is. She keeps saying that my family's going to be here to pick me up after the holidays, even though it's October, and she's been there for years. So, he kind of antagonizes her, asks her, hey, is there anybody in there? And then like not bashes her, but like knocks on her head with the puppet. It looked like it hurt. I mean, it's a senior citizen. I would imagine it didn't tickle. Let's see what else. At one point, there's excuse me. There is a altercation in the lunchroom one day where David Creel basically, I think what it is the judge basically asks him, like, what's your deal? So are you crazy? Blah, blah, blah. And then basically he says, you know what? I don't even care, because regardless, you're just a stupid cunt. And instantly you see Lithgow's expression change. He walks right up to him and says, I'll see you tonight. And then the judge just throws pudding in his eye. And what is funny is that you have to side with the judge here, because it seems like every time David Creeley does something to the judge, the staff is just kind of like, whatever, like, which there could be something to that once we actually get to the reveal later on in the movie. But anytime the judge says that Creel has attacked him, they just kind of blow him off and don't really listen. So let's see. I mean, like I said, there's various different incidences. there's also some great imagery in this movie. There's some great like hallucinatory imagery. Like there's one awesome image in this movie of Judge Stefan, but he's the prosecuted, he's not the prosecutor, he's like the criminal. And then the judge is the puppet, but it's gigantic. It literally takes up like the entirety of the courtroom. It's just a great looking shot. Let's see. Eventually, Creeley tries to basically get the judge to do what multiple other people do in this, and that's basically kind of worship the puppet, of course, named Jenny Penn. Basically, the puppet, he'll use the puppet and say, who rules this home? And you have to answer Jenny Penn. And then what he'll do is he'll move the puppet, the bottom part of the puppet off his wrist, and then he'll put his wrist in front of the person and say, now lick her asshole. Even they're just licking his wrist basically, but he basically is like, now lick her asshole. And this is basically, just another form of him controlling these people. At one point, he tries to get to the judge to say that, and the judge flat out says, I'm not talking to a fucking puppet. Okay, which of course antagonizes Creeley. Eventually, Creeley walks right up to him again and puts the puppet right in front of his face and says again, who rules? And the judge just spits in the puppet's face. But this was a response I didn't actually expect. Rather than Lithgow like getting mad and attacking the judge, or saying something ominous like I'll see you tonight or whatever, he just spits back at the judge. He spits in the judge's face 3 times. So the judge spits in the puppet's face, Lithgow spits in the judge's face, and then Lithgow, David Creeley, ends up walking out frustrated. Now, you kind of see that he's frustrated, and it's almost like he wants to kill the judge, but I think he wants to break the judge. Like, he doesn't want to kill the judge. That's too easy. I think he wants to break the judge. He wants to get the judge to do what everybody else in the place does, that Jenny Penn rules and licking her asshole and everything else. But the judge isn't at that point yet where he's broken him. So instead he goes out and the lady that he was antagonizing earlier in the film that he bopped on the head with the puppet, he basically gets her and tells her, hey, your family's here. Your family's finally here. And she's all excited, sweet little old lady. She's, oh, yay, they're here. They go out to the front of the facility. And at this point, you're probably wondering, how does David Creel, a patient in this place, have a key card that opens every fucking key in this place? That answer is coming soon. Just hold on a sec. So basically, he uses his pass. He opens up the front door of the facility, and then he opens up the front gate, and he basically tells the old woman, your family's right there. You see them? They're just right there in that field. And then she just starts running after them, thinking that her family's there. And then obviously this is an old woman. It's the middle of the night. It's cold. The likelihood that she's going to survive a night by herself in the woods is slim to none. And obviously Creeley knows that. So Creeley goes back into the place figuring, well, she's done for. But then he realizes that he has the wrong key card. Somehow during the altercation that led them to leave the building, they had swapped key cards. Like, she grabbed his key card and then he grabbed it back, but apparently he grabbed the wrong one. He grabbed her key card. So when he gets back to his room, he's trying to get into his room and it's not opening. And he's freaking out, and then he flips the card over, and it's her card. It's the woman's card. So then we see him frantically running back outside. This is the scene that proves that he is not a psychopath or a sociopath, because neither a psychopath or a sociopath would have given a rat's ass about the key card. They don't care about getting caught. That's the point. Yes, they're careful and they try not to, but they don't care. They have no sense of right or wrong. So yeah, this guy is not a psychopath. I'm sorry. This description is wrong. IMDb got it wrong. But anyway, he rushes back outside and then he finds the old woman, and unfortunately she is face down in a little creek there outside of the hospital, so she's very obviously dead. He flips her over, frantically looking through all her pockets. Finally, he finds his key card, and then he swaps the cards. He puts her card back in her pocket, and then, what do you call it? Goes back inside. So like I said, this just kind of shows that he's not a psychopath, because he wouldn't have given a rat's ass if he was. Now, there was a scene earlier in the film that I actually forgot to mention that actually is rather important. There's a cat that lives in this nursing home, and this cat is very similar to the cat from Dr. Sleep. If you guys remember Dr. Sleep from a few years ago, the cat that lived in the nursing home would spend the night with any patient that was going to die that night. Basically, the cat knew when people were going to die. Well, same thing in this movie. There's a cat, and basically all the residents are kind of scared of the cat, because the cat the cat knows when someone's going to die, and the cat will start hanging around that person. He'll start following them around the nursing home, things like that. So early on in the film, literally the judge's first day at the nursing home, he goes outside to smoke a cigarette with one of the other residents. That resident is coughing his lungs out. Potentially one of the funniest scenes in the movie. I don't know if it was meant to be funny, but it comes off that way, sadly. He's smoking. I mean, he looks like he's a chain smoker. He's coughing so hard that he's actually having trouble speaking. Like, I didn't fully understand everything that guy said until my second viewing. Like, when I watched it the first time, I literally threw my hands up in the air at the theater. Like, what did he just say? I didn't catch any of that. But what he said was, he was explaining to the judge about the cat. He said, oh yeah, that cat basically hangs out with people that he knows are about to die, and the cat is right there. Go figure. So this guy also has a flask of whatever alcohol, and he offers it to the judge. He offers the judge a cigarette. The judge takes the cigarette. He offers them whatever's in that flask. The judge politely says no. Then the judge gets up to start walking around to try to exercise his legs. We see the guy in the wheelchair, the other resident, take a swig from his flask, but then he coughs up instantly. Like, he didn't get to swallow. He coughs it up all over himself. Then we get this great shot, another great shot, where the judge is in the foreground, and suddenly the old guy in the background bursts into flame. Apparently, I mean, I'm sure most of you figured it out by now, when he spit up the liquor all over him and then went to light another cigarette, he basically set himself on fire. And this is another scene that's just like, where is this staff? The judge is out there for like a good 30 seconds just yelling for help. No one comes. Like, there's literally a resident on fucking fire right outside the front door of this facility, yet no one seems to fucking care or come running or anything. So, and that happens very early in the movie. Like I said, that's like the judge's first day there. So we've established the cat, because the cat does come in. He's rather important later on, specifically for the last shot of the film. Anyway, back to the old woman. So it's the next morning, and we get this great shot. Like, this shot is really cool, because we see the old woman dead in the creek, but then the camera pans out to show this gorgeous forested scene with like solar lens flare coming through the trees. Like, it's a gorgeous shot, but then right at the bottom there's a dead body. So it's got that great dichotomy of, like, you know, this beautiful life, you know, filled nature, but then a dead body right at the base. I love that shot. That shot was stellar. I absolutely adored it. So after this, of course, where are we here? Let me see. Oh, okay. At this point in the film, the judge and Sonny, the rugby player, which, by the way, I mentioned earlier that I had issues with the rugby player. The issues that I have with him is that he was kind of an asshole at first. Like, when he first met the judge in the lunchroom, they had a little conversation about books and, you know, what they were reading. But then for the next couple of days, everything that Sonny did was kind of annoying the judge, making noise, talking to his grandkids, talking about rugby, blah, 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 blah. And then suddenly, after the death, or not after the death of the old woman, but oh wait, I skipped, or not skipped, but it's after this. So basically, the judge and Sonny decide they're going to try to do something. They're going to try to get rid of Creeley themselves. We don't know what they're trying yet. All we see is the judge steal one of the nurse's passes, one of the passes that opens every door in the hospital, and basically parks himself around the corner from Creeley's room, waiting for David Creeley to get taken away to take his daily bath or his daily shower. As soon as the nurse walks Creeley out of the room, we then get to see the judge break into Creeley's room. And Creeley's room is actually very telling as well. Did you guys notice that he had nothing in that room other than a bed and a chair? No decorations on the wall, no pictures of family, no crucifix, like nothing. And what that says to me about him is that David Creeley has no joy in his life. Because, I mean, how many of us have pictures on our wall, posters, action figures on a shelf, whatever the case may be? Like, most of us, something brings us joy and we have it in our house. But Creeley, his room is empty, literally empty. There's nothing in it but a bed and a chair. So it just kind of shows that this man has no joy in his life, and that the only thing that brings him any joy is the puppet, and then antagonizing people, and that's it. Which, like I said, not a psychopath. Anyway, let's see. Okay, at this point, the judge goes to a therapy session, and this is where we start to see that the judge isn't getting any better. He's actually deteriorating. His brain is getting worse. He keeps having what they call blips, which is basically blackout moments. Not that he's blacking out like passing out, but basically his brain just goes somewhere else. Like he'll be in the middle of a conversation, and then suddenly the camera will turn and he'll be talking to someone different. And he'll be like, oh shit, what happened? Like I had a blip. I went out there again. So, we get this disastrous. Oh, and then this is the scene where we get, I mentioned it earlier, where we see the judge. Basically, the therapist asks him to draw a clock and to draw the time 10:55 on it. So we see the judge take a piece of paper, draw a circle, not a perfect circle, but a decent little circle. He writes all 12 of the numbers around the edge of the clock, and then he puts the hour and minute hand on there to point to 10:55. The judge looks at it, and we look at it through the lens of the camera, and it looks correct. But then the judge slides the picture over to the therapist, and suddenly we see what he actually drew. And it's like the numbers are like nowhere in the right position. He didn't actually draw any minute or hour hands. Like, it's the most fucked up drawing. And this is another scene that really just made me feel bad, because again, this guy's brain is working against him because he had a stroke. He thinks he's doing well, but in actuality, he's not. His brain is just making him think he's doing well. And, that's just really sad. So after this disastrous therapy session, we see the judge start going down the hall back to his room. And what we see on the wall is a line of annual staff pictures. So like every year at this hospital, they'll take a picture of the current staff and they'll put the pictures up on the wall. So the judge looks at the current picture for that year. There's Dave Creeley there as a patient. He goes back a few years. We see that Creeley's been there a few years as a patient. But then suddenly he starts looking at pictures from the 80s. And suddenly David Creeley is still in the pictures, but he's not dressed as a patient. He's dressed as a fucking orderly. Yes, my friends, David Creeley has been at this nursing home for over 40 years, well over 40 years, because I think the last picture that they show was 1968, and it shows a very young John Lithgow in the picture with orderly clothes on. So yeah, this motherfucker was an orderly. He was probably a bully when he was an orderly, and then probably because he didn't have any family or any loved ones to care for him, the hospital probably just said, fuck it, you can stay with us. I mean, you worked here for 40 years. Screw it. We'll give you a room. I mean, that's just my theory, mind you. We don't get any confirmation of this, but We do get the confirmation that David Creeley was a staff member at this hospital for over 40 years before finally becoming a patient, or a resident, if you will. So that kind of explains how he has a key card that opens every door in the hospital. The question that I have, though, and well, there's multiple questions that I have. Like, does the staff know who this guy is? Like, does the current staff know that he was a staff member and that's why they're showing him preferential treatment? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. We don't get any confirmation of that. Another thing that's funny that happens is that anytime someone gets attacked in the hospital, no orderlies, no security, no nursing staff, nothing. Nobody shows up. But as soon as David Creeley gets attacked, suddenly 4 nurses show up. Now, I don't know if that was intentional, if that was done intentionally by the director to kind of put that idea in our head that the staff knows who Creeley is and what he's doing. I don't know. Like I said, folks, your guess is as good as mine, because the staff seemed nice. Like, all the staff of this hospital, or of this nursing home, there were no assholes. There were no dickheads. They were all nice people doing their job, doing the best that they could. So I don't know. Do they know who David Creeley is? Your guess is as good as mine, folks. So anyway, there's the reveal. He's been here the whole time, and now he's still trying to control the residents of this place. He must have been an asshole when he was young, because then when he's young, he can actually overpower most of these residents. Now that he's actually a resident himself, he can't overpower everybody the way he used to be able to 30, 40 years ago. So, which probably adds to his mental state. So, like I said, after this happens, the judge and Sonny decide to try to do something. This is when he breaks into Creeley's room. I'm sorry, I'm kind of all over the place here, but like I said, we're back to the scene now where the judge breaks into Creeley's room. We see him find a picture of a seaside town that's labeled. I forget what the label on it was, whatever. It doesn't really matter. But that's literally the only thing that's not hospital property in that room, is a single black and white picture. And then the judge just leaves, and we're not 100% sure what he actually attempted to do, if he attempted to do anything. So that afternoon, David Creeley does the Jenny Penn dance, and basically there's actually a song called Mother Brown that references Jenny Penn. So that's probably where he got the name of this puppet from this song. He basically starts doing this song and dance, which I think is in the trailer, so you kind of see a piece of it. He's doing this song and dance, and then he falls over with breathing trouble. I did forget to mention that David Creeley has asthma. And another thing that I will give this movie credit for, this is the most realistic use of asthma inhalers I've ever seen in a movie. I'm sure you guys remember me complaining at least more than once about how fake inhalers always look in movies, like in the It movies with Eddie, where he inhales the inhaler and then blows it out right away. For those of you out there who don't have asthma, when you take a rescue inhaler, you're supposed to hold it in for 10 seconds. In this movie, the first time that we see David Creeley use his asthma inhaler, he actually holds it in for like 4 or 5 seconds. Obviously, he's not going to hold it in for the whole 10, because 10 seconds in the span of a movie is a long time to some people. Just sitting there staring at the guy holding his breath for 10 seconds, that would be monotonous. But he does hold his breath for like 4 or 5 seconds and then exhales. I'm like, wow, that's the most realistic use of a fucking inhaler I've ever seen in a movie. So I'll give the movie kudos for that, at least. Anyway, back to the song and dance. After the song and dance, Lithgow falls over. He doesn't pass out. He falls over, and his breathing is giving him trouble. He pulls out his asthma inhaler from his pocket, and it's empty. It's totally empty. There's nothing in it. But of course, as any good asthma, sufferer, we have backups. You always have to have a backup to your inhaler, because if you only have one inhaler in the house and that thing fails, you could legitimately die. It sounds like an exaggeration, but folks, I've literally stopped breathing in the middle of the night because my asthma was so bad, and my sleep apnea too. But that's a story for another day. So anyway, Creeley runs to his room to get another inhaler. He pulls out another inhaler. That one's empty. Then he pulls out another inhaler, and that one's empty. Then we get a flashback shot of the judge in Creeley's room with his asthma inhalers, and he's just wasting them. He's just, just press, just basically pressing them until the tanks are empty. So literally every tank, every asthma inhaler in David Creeley's room is empty. Eventually, we see that he starts to pass out. You start to think, oh shit, the plan's actually going to work. Like this scene was actually really well done. It was exciting. The way that the music was swelling up, like all of it, it was really cool. And then he falls over, like he opens the door of his room to walk out to try to go get a nurse, but he literally falls over and passes out right in the threshold of his bedroom door. Unfortunately, just as the shot is about to cut, we see a nurse walking down the hall. So it kind of sucks, but I think you all know what's coming now. That day, the next day, I should say, the judge and Sonny are looking around for Creeley. They can't find him. And they're like, wow, did it work? Like, they don't know. They haven't gotten any confirmation yet. And we as the audience haven't seen Creeley since his asthma attack either. So the judge and Sonny just kind of smile at each other, and they feel like they've accomplished something. And then we actually see the judge get a good night's sleep for the first time since he's been here. He actually puts down the call button, because that was kind of the gag, is that he never put down his call button. He always had it in his hand in case Creeley, decided to mess with him some more. But we actually see him put the call button down, take his glasses off, and sleep. For the first time ever, he sleeps. Now, after that, the next day, the judge is again at a therapy session that's not going well, but then suddenly he has another blip. And suddenly he's in his chair, but his chair is moving down the hall very fast, like somebody's pushing him fast. He doesn't, like I said, he just came out of a blip, so he doesn't really know what's going on. So he goes to look up to tell the nurse, oh, just take me back to my room. Of course, he looks up, and it's David Creeley with that crazy ass look on his face. I forgot to ask, what did you guys think of Lithgow's eyes in this movie? Did you guys notice that they were dilated the entire fucking movie? That was creepy. Like, that was creepier than the doll to me, honestly, was Lithgow's eyes.
He's on some type of meds or something. Who knows?
Oh, yeah, definitely. But, his eyes were just dilated. Not fully dilated, but partially dilated the entire movie. And I'm just like, what am I looking at? It kind of supports the theory that maybe he is kind of crazy. But like I said, his actions don't say that he's a psychopath. So, anyway. Creeley pushes the judge into the common room, throws him off of the wheelchair, and then there's two other people in the room, a man and a woman. I think they're husband and wife, actually. I think they're together. Creeley throws the judge to the ground. Then he takes the man and he wheels him to the other side of the room facing away. So the poor old guy is sitting there. What's going on? He doesn't even know it was David. He's sitting there yelling, "Who is it?" I think he was blind, actually. Yes, that's right. He had those glasses on. Yes. So the man was blind. So he's sitting there. Who is it? And then suddenly he starts dancing with the woman. And the blind guy is like, "Who is that?" And the woman says, "Oh, it's Georgie. He's come back." I have no idea who they're talking about. Obviously, they're senile. So, but then David starts dancing with the woman. He basically just starts dancing, and the woman seems happy. She's like, "Oh, yay, I love dancing." Obviously her husband is blind and in a wheelchair, so she probably hasn't danced in a while. But then the movie takes a weird fucking turn, because then Creeley says to the woman, "Let's get you ready for your bath." And he sits her down on a chair, and he literally starts undressing this woman with her husband right there, facing the other way, obviously, screaming, "Get away from her, stay away from her, don't touch her, blah, 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 blah." The judge is still on the ground. Don't forget, the judge had a stroke, so it's not like he has his full physical capabilities to be able to get up off the ground. Eventually, David takes the woman's shirt off and pulls it down. She does have a slip on underneath, thankfully, so we don't see anything that we might regret. But then finally, the judge gets up. He's up on his feet, and he has a cane in his hand, a cane that he uses to help him, with his physical therapy. Eventually, David turns around after taking this old woman's shirt off and says, "Oh, Judge, what are you going to do?" But then the judge takes a badass swing and breaks his fucking arm. The judge breaks John Lithgow's arm with the cane. It's not obvious that the arm is broken, but in the next scene, Lithgow has a cast on his arm, a full cast, not just a soft one, like a full hard cast. So fucking judge broke his arm, but that's so awesome. But again, like I was saying earlier, this woman is literally getting sexually assaulted, no staff, no orderlies, but as soon as David Creeley gets hit by the cane, suddenly 3 staff members show up. So again, take that information and do with it what you will. Is the staff in on it? I don't know. So whatever. After the attack, the judge has a little bit of a backtrack with his physical therapy. He ends up getting put in a room by himself, like a medically closed room. And eventually the judge is able to recover. I don't know how the passage of time in this movie is really hard to figure out. They don't actually tell you how much time goes by. So after a few days, the judge is back. And he's basically going to the lunchroom, and we see Sonny, and Sonny is surprised to see the judge. I think Sonny didn't expect to see the judge again after that whole thing with Creeley and the sexual assault. So eventually, Sonny says to the judge, "You are one tough son of a bitch. You're way tougher than you look." And then he looks over at Lithgow, and Lithgow has this just look on his face of, that smug look on his face, like he won or something. And then this is where we actually start to like Sonny. At this point, Sonny walks up to him and does the haka. I really hope you guys know what the haka is. It is this amazing pre-match ritual that the players in New Zealand do before a rugby match. So you've got like all these Aboriginal, big buff dudes, and they're doing this haka, which is basically a choreographed song and dance, but it's like a badass one. It's basically a call to arms. It's basically like a warning to their opponent that we're about to go to war. So yeah, Sonny does his best to do the haka. Obviously, Sonny loses his breath after a couple of lines, but it's still an impressive scene. I actually really dug that Sonny finally got his head out of his ass and decided he was actually going to do something. And like I said, if you know what the haka is, you know the symbolism of it. Him doing it to Lithgow was basically him saying, "That's it. I'm done. I'm done taking your shit. I'm going to start defending myself." So then it's that evening, and we're nearing the finale now. That evening, we see Dave Creeley start walking around the nursing home, and he's obviously looking for Sonny and the judge, but he can't find them. He walks into Sonny's room, and his bed is empty, but the sheets are not folded, but the sheets are like pulled over, so it looks like somebody was in the bed. So obviously Sonny's around here somewhere. Finally, Dave Creeley goes down to the laundry room because I think he realizes that some of the residents hide in the laundry room. Like earlier in the film, we actually see Sonny hiding in the laundry room because he's worried that, Creeley might be coming after him, blah, blah, blah. But apparently Creeley knows about this room because he walks right down to the laundry room. He starts looking around. And then eventually Sonny drops a towel, like he's in a small part of the laundry room. He's not in the main room with all the machines. He's like in a closet. Suddenly he drops a towel, and it makes a loud enough noise that Creeley hears it. Creeley then walks into that room, that storage room with all the towels in it, and sees the judge just sitting there without his wheelchair, literally just sitting there. And I forget exactly what Creeley says, but he makes some snide remark, and then he walks into the room very antagonistically. But as soon as he walks into the room, he's tackled by Sonny from behind. So, obviously this was a setup. Basically, the judge tells Sonny to just hold his legs. Don't do anything. Just hold his legs. Hold him down. That's all I need you to do. While the judge is on top of Creeley's torso, holding him down, trying to strangle him with his hands, but then he realizes that, he's a stroke patient. He's not really, he doesn't have the hand strength to actually strangle someone with his hands. So then he starts grabbing sheets and towels and starts jamming them into Creeley's mouth, eventually covering his face completely, and then just kind of holding over him, like putting all of his body weight on Creeley's face to, obviously, they're smothering him. Eventually, Creeley stops moving. The judge and Sonny kind of roll over off of Creeley. Eventually, we see Sonny's hand move the sheets, and we get the confirmation that Creeley is dead. His eyes are open, his mouth is open, and he's not moving, he's not breathing, blah, blah, blah. Sonny and the judge just kind of have a quiet moment there where they kind of nod and reflect on what they just did. Then we see, and I forgot to mention that while Creeley was walking to the laundry room, you see the cat follow him. I love this cat. This cat not only knows when someone's going to die of natural causes, he just knows when someone's about to die. Don't forget, he was hanging around with the guy earlier who set himself on fire by accident. So now, the cat, savvy viewers, if you were looking, because it's a quick shot, it's literally like a 1-second shot. But if you look, you'll see the cat start to take a step towards the direction that Creeley's walking. And it's like, oh, okay, something fun's about to happen. And then, of course, yes, he is taken out by our gentleman friends. Eventually, we see the judge take the puppet, the Jenny Penn puppet, and put it on a barbecue and burn it. Basically just burns it to oblivion. And then we get one final shot of like all the residents in the common area of the nursing home. They've all got smiles on their face. They're all happy. Even the judge is happy. Like the judge is playing backgammon with one of the other residents. Sonny is talking to one of the other ladies there. I mean, like everybody's in a good mood, obviously, because Creeley's gone. And then, unfortunately, the judge looks down and sees the cat sitting at his feet staring at him. And then the film goes to black, and that's it, friends. So it looks like, despite everything that the judge went through, it looks like he's going to be the next one to go. But thankfully, they don't show it on screen. The last shot is literally just the cat staring up at the judge. So it's kind of a bittersweet ending. Obviously, Creeley's gone, but now we know that the judge probably is going to be gone in the next day or two as well. So, but that's it, folks. That is our movie. Hopefully I did it some justice. I don't know if I like it anymore after talking about it now, but yeah. Like I said, I don't want to make it sound like this is a bad movie. I think all three of us are kind of in agreement. This is objectively a good movie. It's well made, well performed, well edited. The score is great. The cinematography is great. All of it's great. It's just a matter of how this story works for you. If you're okay with excessive bullying, if you're okay with a quote unquote psychopath that doesn't actually actively kill anyone in the film, like I said, he's responsible for certain people dying, but we don't actually see him kill anybody. And I don't think he ever does. Because after the old lady dies, the judge actually makes a comment to him saying, so was she your first one? Like the judge knew that Creeley killed her, because the judge saw the paramedics dragging her out of, on the gurney, wheeling her out of the forest. So the judge knew that Creeley killed her. It was just a matter of if he killed her directly or indirectly. Obviously, we as the viewer know that it's indirectly, but yeah, like I said, this movie, and it's just terrible nursing home. If this nursing home was at least a little bit more realistic, show me a security guard walking the halls, show me a security camera every now and again, it would have elevated this movie so much more. But just those few little things that just the absolute fakeness of this nursing home. And I'm a 50-plus-year-old horror fan, and you think I'm just going to believe that a nursing home doesn't have security? No, fuck you. Yeah, maybe some 20-year-old horror fans might not even think about it. They might not even know that there's supposed to be security in a nursing home. They probably figure, what's there to secure? It's all old people. But no, trust me, my friends, there's security there. So, yeah, what can I say? Good movie, but just I had so many problems with it that I just can't really get into it. So I'll leave it at that for now. Mike?
Yeah, same. Oh, sorry. Whoops.
Yeah, nothing much to add there. Just like I said, it's hard to call it enjoyable, even though I thought the performances were good. So I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of just great performances and great filmmaking, you're going to love the movie. You really are. And if you're more forgiving of the certain story elements that bothered me, then I think you're going to love the movie, honestly. Like, I think a lot more people are going to like the movie than we did. And, it's just a matter of how those certain story elements work for you. Some people are just more forgiving of that stuff. I myself am an old crotchety man, so I'm less forgiving.
All right, then. What else do we have out for people to listen to?
All right, so let's see. We've got Creature Comforts, episode 35 is still the latest episode, where we looked at 1942's Cat People. We will be recording the next episode of Creature Comforts, episode 36. That will cover 1958's The Fly. And then if you would like to know our thoughts on the remakes of those films, we actually talk about those on the latest episode of the main show, No More Room in Hell. That one just got recorded, so might be like a week or so before you actually get to hear it. But yeah, on that episode, we looked at the Cat People remake from 1982 and then the Fly remake from 1986. And if I didn't mention it on the next episode of Creature Comforts, we will be looking at the original Fly. Mike will be joining us for that one, so we'll have the whole family together again. And the whole family was together for the latest episode of the main show. So, like I said, check that out. And then I do have I got 2 announcements for the Crystal Lake Gift Shop. Episode 7 is now out. And on that one, we looked at episode 7 of the Friday the 13th, the series show that aired from 1987 to 1990. We looked at the episode called Dr. Jack that actually has ties to Jack the Ripper. If anybody's interested in checking out that episode, that's season 1, episode 7. And then we already recorded our next episode, episode 8, where we looked at the episode called Shadow Boxer. That one is still in the editing stage, so I would imagine you're not going to hear that for probably another week or two, only because I tend to prioritize Creature Comforts over Crystal Lake Gift Shop when it comes to my editing. So, Creature Comforts will always be out first, and then Crystal Lake will be the next one after that. So that's pretty much all I have.
All right. How about you, Bone?
As mentioned, the latest episode of Creature Comforts is available. Looking forward to getting the second episode in, because I've seen the original once, but I don't remember much about it. So I'm kind of glad to revisit the original Fly and get that show recorded. We did the guest spot on the main show, of course, which Venom already mentioned. So look out for that one. And I'm pleased to say that the recording for that special werewolf episode roundtable that I've been talking about has been recorded. We did a round robin tournament style for, I think it was around 32 indie werewolf movies. That should be available in podcast form sooner rather than later, but I don't know the timetable. If you want to watch a live recording of it, it's available on YouTube in the I think it's Paranormal is the New Normal YouTube channel. You can see the live recording of it there until the podcast is available. But finally glad to get that out and have that one available for you all. So go ahead and check that one out when you can. Otherwise, that's pretty much all I got.
Okay, and then what I got has already been mentioned. So for our next one, there's another movie coming out in the theater too. Another one that
Opus.
Opus, which I haven't heard much about. I haven't heard anyone talk about it coming out. So
I know a few things just because I've seen Instagram trailers for it. I have an idea of what it's about. It'll probably be a little thrillery. The main thing I'm getting in terms of tone for comparison's sake would be the menu. It's not a similar movie, but I think in terms of tone and atmosphere, the menu is the closest one that I'm getting from the comments. I could be wrong, but that's just my thinking. I'll explain off air.
Cool.
Okay. Well, we'll find out soon enough, for sure. Cool. All right. Well, the aforementioned episode of the main show that was recorded should be available probably within a few days of anyone listening to this episode, so look for that soon. Other than that, thank you everyone for listening to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. We will be back in a week with a new episode. Let's say bye to listeners.
Later.
Adios, folks. Don't play with puppets.
Peace.